how's it going? Let's talk about some of the books that I've read recently, because I've read some good stuff. I cut my hair. I'm wearing a sweater that my best friend made for me, which is honestly incredible. She is an artiste, I'm well aware, and I'm so grateful. So yeah, this is a vibe. The first book I want to talk about is The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. I read this for class, but I had always wanted to pick up a James Baldwin book, and there are so many, I had no idea where to start. So this was a great push into any of them. This is a very short book, novella, whatever you want to call it. I would call it like two-part essay, maybe. Technically, this book is divided into two different parts. The first part is a letter to James Baldwin's nephew, but it's very short. It's only around 10 pages. And then the second part, which is like the remaining 90 pages of the book, is more of an extended essay, but not really an essay, more of like just a train of thought that leads many different places. One of my favorite things about this was how direct Baldwin can be sometimes. He doesn't really shy away from making a statement that is, it is what it is, you know? I found this very powerful. I was sitting there just underlining things half the time, and that's when you know it's educational and it's probably making you a better person. On only page 8, he says, "They are, in effect, still trapped in a history which they do not understand, and until they understand it, they cannot be released from it." And he's talking about white people, of course. So I would highly recommend this. It's a very quick read, but also a very informative and very important read. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Delirium by Lauren Oliver, which is something that's been on my shelf for a very long time, and I doubted whether I would still like it or not because it's a young adult dystopian, which I've read, you know, quite a few of, and time again, they kind of, you know, repeat the same tropes and don't do anything really inventive. But I gave it a chance because the concept still intrigued me, because Delirium is set in a dystopian world where love is viewed as a disease that is only a bad thing, and so people at age 16 or 18, they get what's called the cure, which gets rid of love. I mean, they call love amor delirium nervosa, I think. Once they get this cure, they no longer have loving feelings towards anyone. Something that surprised me about this book is when I went in, I kind of just expected that when it was talking about love, it only meant romantic love, but it actually was talking about platonic love, familial love, all types of love, which made it even more interesting because, I mean, what's a world in which the parents don't really have any true affection for their children, but they're just caring for them out of necessity, out of obligation? It was just very interesting, like, to explore that type of dynamic. I did really enjoy listening to this audiobook. I found it really entertaining, and in the end, I actually really liked how it ended, which if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, okay. I don't know if I'll continue on with the trilogy, but we'll see. My like very minor pet peeves with this book were that it did kind of fall into like some really old, dated like YA holes. Like the main character is a plain brunette girl who is so ordinary that she doesn't understand why anyone would like her, and her best friend is the radiant blonde girl who everybody adores. And while I understand to an extent what the author was trying to do with that, because like it really shows Lena's character development by the end of the novel, I don't know if it was like really that remarkable of a character development to where I would justify calling her calling herself a plain ordinary girl. I just didn't, you know, it just felt very vanilla. Also, there's nothing too special about the love interest, Alex, but he's there. He does his purpose, and it absolutely is a case of insta-love, I will admit that. But, you know, in its own way, for some reason, I think it actually is kind of necessary in this book, because how else are you going to explore a plotline in this world without a very quick romance to speed it up? I thought about that, and I'm not really sure. Okay, next, I just finished reading Sula by Toni Morrison last night, and I love this, and I'm not surprised because I have genuinely really enjoyed everything that I've read by Toni Morrison so far. I love some of them more than others, but I think that they're all just immaculate. So if you read any Toni Morrison novel, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna like it. So I highly recommend her as an author. Sula in particular focuses on this town, Medallion, Ohio, and in this town there are two young girls, Nell and Sula, who grow up together as best friends who feel like kindred spirit with one another, and they navigate the world trying to find their expected role versus what they end up pursuing for themselves as Black women. And, you know, a series of betrayals, unexpected events occurs, and they just kind of have to determine how they stand with each other and how they stand within their communities as well. This book is so short, like it's only 174 pages, and yet it explores so many different topics. It kind of amazes me. Just to name a few, it talks about different types of loneliness that you can inhabit. It talks about the resignation of an entire community, this entire town of Medallion, Ohio. Like I said, it explores the expected roles versus newly invented roles and non-conformative roles that you can take on. And a really, really big one, I think, is the internal struggle against mundanity. I'm not really sure how to say the word. Sula in particular struggles the whole novel because she wants to find interest in everything in her life, but she kind of has this acute sense that everything has already been done before. Everything is just something that she's supposed to do, that the world is blanketly mundane, and she searches to change that in every aspect of her life. In the end, Toni Morrison really gives you no answers. That's not what she's trying to do. It's pretty much just an exploration of all these ideas, and at the end of it, it just leaves you thinking. Like, I finished it last night, and then I thought, what do I even think about this book? I don't know. And then after I laid in bed and just thought about it for hours, and then I woke up today and thought about it some more, and those are my thoughts right now, but who knows, maybe they'll be different tomorrow. But yeah, all the questions, all the explorations, they give you a lot of thoughts. So I would highly recommend this. I have also been continuing reading Don Quixote de la Mancha by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. I really don't know how to describe my thoughts about this book because I'm supposed to be reading it all in Spanish, and here's the deal. That took me too much time because I have a lot of class reading for all my other classes, and the pace that this professor is assigning us to read this book at is just too much for my schedule. So I have switched over to only listening to the audiobook in English of this book, and I'm okay with that. I go back and read enough passages in Spanish to where I feel like I'm getting a gist of both of them. Obviously, I am not taking it in its original form, which is probably the best way that you could, but I don't got that much time right now. So I know this book is so beloved by so many different people, and most people will be like, oh, it's the funniest book you'll read in your life. It is so good. And I'm not going to say that you're like totally wrong if you think that, because it's not a bad book. I just don't agree with that completely, because yes, sometimes it's a really funny book and I'll sit there and I'll laugh at something stupid that Don Quixote does, but he just does it over and over again. Like, my complaint, by the way, I have just finished volume 1, so I've read like 500 something pages of this, is that you don't need this much. Like, the point was, I got the point in a couple hundred pages. You didn't need 500 plus 500 more that I'm about to read. Like, I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen in the next half, but was it necessary? You decide for yourself, but I decide not really. It's funny, and I don't hate it. I just like it a little bit, but I don't know. I'm conflicted. We'll see how I end up with my thoughts once I read the rest of it. I want to talk about A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, which came out this past month. Not March. Wait, now it's March. It came out in February. But yes, I finished this last week sometime. And of course, I gave it 5 stars. Thought it was great. But I would like to expand on that thought a little bit, because even though I really enjoyed reading this and it was addicting, like, it's Sarah J. Maas. I'm addicted to reading her books. So it was pretty much inevitable that that was how I was going to feel about it. However, I do have some complaints, and I'm not going to get into like spoiler complaints here, but in as few details as possible, let me put it like this. If you are reading Sarah J. Maas books for the plot at this point, I really don't believe you. Like, I feel like you're just lying to yourself, because we're reading this for the characters and we're reading it for the smut, and that's all that there is to it. Sarah J. Maas is essentially writing her own fan fiction, and I will gobble it up. So there's that. 700 pages of fan fiction? Sure. I'll pay $25 for it again. Sure, whatever. I recognize the problem with that. I do. But I don't really care. There were certain plot decisions in this book that I just felt were either unnecessary or a little bit overly dramatic, but for the sake of the angst, I'm going to choose to accept them and to appreciate them as much as I can. I absolutely love Nesta in this book, who is the main character in this novel, and I think that her internal journey from the beginning to the end is really remarkable, and I really love her group of friends that she forms along the way, and I think that that is the most wholesome and empowering part of this book. So yes, this was great. Recently, I also read Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine, and this is kind of a multimedia collection of poems slash vignettes slash repurposed quotes, but also with art mixed in, and also like screenshots from videos mixed in, like lots of different things in there. But it is all dealing with the ever-present racism in the United States. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a very quick reading experience, but also one that you should take your time and slow down a little bit and reread parts of it again to make sure that you're really getting the full impact of what you're reading. I enjoyed some parts of it more than others, but I think that all of it was really wonderful. I think my favorite part was a poem. I think it would be a poem entitled Stop and Frisk. So if you're interested in just looking that up, I think that probably should be online somewhere, but it is phenomenal. I thought that was amazing and very important. I also recently finished listening to the audiobook of A Promised Land by Barack Obama, this is the second time I have checked out this audiobook from the library, because for some reason, not for some reason, I know the reason, because it's Barack Obama. It has so many holes on it at the library, and it's so long. It's like over 700 pages, I think. And so the first time I checked it out, I only listened to a third of it. And so this time I was like, you know what, Caitlin? You're going to finish it. You're going to conquer it during this hold cycle. So I did, but it took a lot of energy to listen to all of that. And I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it, I think, 3 stars, because even though some parts of it were very interesting, and it was nice to get Barack Obama's perspective on things that went down, or I think my favorite parts actually were like very specific encounters that he had either on the campaign trail or within his time in the White House with random people, like not important people, just like random citizens that he met. And I think those were really wonderful to hear about, and it kind of makes an experience as big as the presidency something small, something normal, if that makes sense. But my biggest complaint with this book is something that Barack Obama, he knows, he acknowledges. It's a little long. And I think it might be because in certain parts, it almost feels like at the Oscars, whenever somebody's like accepting an award and they list like everybody in their entire life that's ever spoken to them, and then the music is playing and like begging them to get off the stage, but they won't, because they feel like they're indebted to every single person. They have to list their full name and their title and what they've done in their life. Sometimes he did that. And I get why he did that, because like there are so many people to thank after a presidency, and what chance do you get to do that other than your memoir? I don't know. So I see it, I get it. But did I enjoy that? No, I did not. But overall, I had a great time listening to this. Thanks for watching this, and I hope you're having a great day. Bye.